Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the profound Islamic concept of prophethood. We're going to dive right into the historical texts and look closely at the data to uncover a really fascinating, continuous thread that connects major world faiths. If you've ever wanted a clear, structured understanding of how divine revelation works in Islam and how it maps onto historical figures you're likely already familiar with, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll cover messengers of the divine. Then, we'll map out a shared prophetic lineage, move on to the final prophet, and wrap up with one core universal message.
Okay, let's jump straight into part 1, Messengers of the Divine, and get a handle on the foundational concepts. To really grasp the weight of this topic, we've got to start with the number 6. Why? Because in the Islamic faith, belief in the prophets isn't just some interesting historical footnote. It literally represents one of the 6 foundational articles of the faith itself. It's a load-bearing pillar for the entire belief system. You simply cannot separate Islam from this concept of continuous historical prophethood.
This sense of continuity is perfectly captured in a direct quote from the Quran, which says, "And for every community there is a messenger." This tells us something absolutely crucial about how the source text views history. Prophethood in Islam is not seen as an isolated, localized event that just happened to one specific group of people. Instead, the texts describe it as a deliberate universal phenomenon spanning all of human history, literally reaching every community across the globe. Muslims actually believe that countless prophets existed throughout time, including many figures who aren't even explicitly named in the Quran.
So the key here is understanding the terminology used for these figures. The Arabic word is al-Anbiya, which translates to prophets. According to the source material, these are specific individuals handpicked to fulfill a dual role. First up, they're tasked with spreading God's message on earth. But their second role is equally vital. They must serve as living, breathing models of ideal human behavior. They don't just deliver the message, right? They have to totally embody it for their communities.
Now, there's a really important nuance to catch here. While all these individuals are prophets, al-Anbiya, there's a highly specific subcategory known as messengers, or rusul in Arabic. A rasul, or messenger, is distinguished by the fact that they receive and transmit direct divine revelation. And the texts note that for most of these messengers, this transmission happens specifically through the interaction of an angel. So it's kind of like a nested category. All messengers are prophets, but not all prophets are messengers.
Moving right along to Section 2, a shared prophetic lineage, where we start building the bridge between traditions.
The source material reveals a very deliberate, structured continuity here. It kicks off with Adam. In Islam, Adam is not only the first human being created by God, but he's also recognized as the very first prophet. From Adam, we move into this vast expanse of history, where diverse messengers were sent by God to different communities across different eras. And this incredible chain eventually culminates with Muhammad, who is designated as the final prophet. It's viewed as one single, unbroken chain of divine communication.
And this reveals a truly profound overlap between the major faiths. Many of the 48 prophets of Judaism, along with key figures central to Christianity, are explicitly venerated in the Quran. The source texts literally use the Arabic versions of their names. For instance, the Jewish prophet Elisha is known as Eliasa, Job is Ayub, Jesus is known as Isa. But it doesn't stop with just the figures. The specific divine texts they brought are also recognized. The Torah given to Moses or Musa is called the Taurat. The Psalms given to David or Daud are known as the Zabur, and the Gospel given to Jesus is called the Injil. It's a deeply interconnected framework that fully acknowledges and integrates those preceding religious traditions.
This brings us to Section 3, the final prophet and the seal of revelation.
According to the texts, the last prophet in Islam is Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He's known by a very specific, very powerful title, Khatam an-Nabiyyin, which translates directly to the seal of the prophets. This specific terminology is absolutely essential because it firmly establishes him, in Islamic belief, as the definitive, final link in that long historical chain we just talked about, meaning there are no prophets to come after him. And the revelation given to this final prophet is, of course, the Quran. The sources tell us that the Quran was revealed to Muhammad in a series of revelations over time, and it was meticulously written down by his companions. Now, a key distinction to understand here is exactly how Muslims view this text. It is strictly revered as the literal, divine Word of God. Because of that, it's considered completely immutable. The belief is that the Quran is divinely protected from any sort of distortion or corruption, destined to remain in its true, pure form right up until the last day.
Impartially looking at the historical sources, it is fascinating to see how the tradition evolved after that final prophet. While Muhammad is definitively the last prophet in Islam, we do see a subsequent divergence in how people approach spiritual figures later on. On one side, some Muslim traditions began to recognize and venerate saints. However, modern schools of thought, specifically Salafism and Wahhabism, strictly reject the entire theory of sainthood altogether. So you have a clear divergence in how different groups within the faith approach spiritual reverence following the era of the prophets.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 4, One Core Universal Message. This is the unifying thread.
The sources are remarkably clear on this point. Every single prophet and messenger, regardless of their specific era, their geography, or their community, preached the exact identical core message. This unified message centers on strict monotheism, the absolute oneness of God, and the exclusive worship of that one God. Alongside this is the strict avoidance of idolatry and sin. Finally, every single messenger brought the belief in the day of resurrection, or the day of judgment, and the reality of life after death. It's essentially one continuous, unchanging thematic thread woven through all of human history.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to really ponder. We've traced a line all the way from Adam, through figures like Moses and Jesus, right up to Muhammad, all bound by a single, unchanging set of core beliefs. So how does recognizing this vast, unified historical continuum fundamentally shift how we view the shared roots of human civilization and global faith? When we see these traditions not as entirely separate silos, but rather as interconnected chapters of the exact same story, well, it kind of changes the entire landscape of human history, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this profound topic today. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.